Mike Locksley was really smart not naming the quarterback before the UConn game.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you for making us part of your day. And now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can get $5 and get a 3-week free trial on NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So Mike Locksley decided not to name the starting quarterback for Maryland football going into the UConn game. And I actually think that was the right decision. So this is a big topic of today. That Coach Locksley said in his press conference that he is not going to name the starting quarterback for Maryland football. He said the team knows who it is. He said the players know who it is. It sounds like the coaching staff knows who it is. It sounds like he knows who it is. So now we really just have to wait to the UConn game. But this was actually the right move. I know for us people who talk about it, for us fans who like to know stuff before it happens and like to be ahead of the game and like stuff to talk about it, really want to get into the quarterback battle and really want to know who the quarterback is. It kind of stinks for us. It does. But at the end of the day, this is a smart thing to do for Maryland football, and it could end up paying off against UConn. For one, it is such a big strategy thing, and that's what Coach Locksley said he did it is because it's all about strategy. UConn now has to prepare for all three of our quarterbacks. They have to prepare for MJ Morris. They have to prepare for Billy Edwards. They have to prepare for Cameron Edge, which makes it a lot harder for them to game plan us for if it went the other way and Coach Locksley was like, yeah, the quarterback is going to be MJ Morris, and then they knew they could focus on MJ Morris tape. They could watch all the tape of him at NC State. They could turn that on. They could understand what he likes to do, what he does against different coverages. And even though he hasn't played in the Maryland system yet, so it won't be an exact type of scouting report, it's a lot easier to prepare for one guy. Or let's say Coach Locksley named Billy Edwards the starter, and then they had to prepare for Billy Edwards, and then they knew they had to prepare for that rushing attack, and they know that they have to prepare for the quarterback run game, and they have to prepare for Billy Edwards' explosive legs and how big he is in the pocket, and they'll have to go back and watch the bowl game that Maryland played, and they'll have to go back to a couple of years ago where Billy Edwards made a start in place of Talia Tagovailoa. So that's why I think that it's a competitive advantage. And same thing, they'll have to prepare for Cameron Edge. Even though many people might not expect him to be the starter, I think he's in the conversation. He might be the most natural thrower of the football in that room. He could be the most talented guy in that room in terms of just throwing the football. They'll have to go back and watch the little bit of Cameron Edge they can find. And so when you look at a team like UConn that is preparing for us, they're going to have to prepare for all three quarterbacks. And trust me, that is not easy. It's a lot easier when you can just prepare for one guy. I'm telling you, it's harder on your scouting team. You have to figure out your scouting quarterback. Your scouting quarterback's got to do a lot of different things. They got to show a lot of different stuff. And so they're going to have to prepare for all three different guys. So it's a competitive advantage for sure. So I think it was a really smart move doing that. I guess the team knows who it is, so I guess Maryland's not going to let it get out who the starting quarterback is. I wonder how hard it is to kind of keep that in because I feel like I don't know if they practice inside or outside during this time. I think a lot of practice is outside, but I feel like a student could just be easily like watching practice or something, and you can kind of see who the starters. I don't know exactly, but it's a hard thing to keep, especially with all these reporters and all these inside type of information. Everyone tries to figure out who the starting quarterback is. And the thing is, it's not like one of those things where it's like, oh, like we have 2 or 3 options, but we all kind of know who it is. Really, nobody has an idea. I've read all these different articles. I'm looking at all these different comment sections on Twitter. Nobody knows. Like everybody has a different prediction, it feels like. And I feel like it's there's no consensus. Like it's not like, oh, it's Billy Edwards, oh, it's MJ Morse. Like there's not a consensus for this battle. Like everyone has a different opinion on it. Everybody feels differently about it. I still believe that MJ Morse is our best option. I think he has had game experience in the ACC. He's played more than Billy. He's played more than Cameron Edge. And I also just think he's probably, in terms of dual threat ability, provides us with the most. I think he provides us with both of the best of both worlds. He can throw the ball. He can also be a passer. He can also rush the football. I think he can do both. And I think when you look at Billy Edwards, I think who might be the favorite right now. A lot of people have been saying it's going to be Billy Edwards. I look at Billy Edwards as a guy where I'm like, I don't know if he's going to be able to make consistent throws enough to our outside guys and to our tight end room as well, to our really talented receiver room for us to be able to win games when we play some of the big dogs, or to stay competitive in some of those types of games. And even just your normal Big Ten teams, when they start game planning towards the Billy Edwards rushing game, is his throwing good enough? Has his throwing gotten better? Is he going to be able to throw the football enough for us to win? I don't know. That's why I lead towards MJ Morris. And then when I think about Cameron Edge, I like him as a passer. Like I've said it multiple times, I think he's the closest thing to Talia, not in terms of how good of a player he is. I'm not saying he's the best player in that room. I just feel like in terms of his play style, he can sit in the pocket and make throws, and I think that could benefit us potentially. So I don't know who the quarterback is, to be completely honest. I'm still going to go with MJ Morris, and it's hard for me to believe that Coach Locksley brings in MJ Morris not to start him. To be completely honest, like that's hard. That's kind of a hard pill for me to swallow, for the fact that they brought him MJ Morris and they would decide not to start him. Like, you guys know what I mean? Like, I know Billy Edwards has been there and Cameron Edge has been there. I know they've been in the system, but if he felt good about Billy and what he's seen from Billy, he would not have felt like he needed to bring in a guy like MJ Morris if he's liked Billy's game. And it's hard for me to believe that Billy has improved so much that Coach Locksley now feels good about him starting. And he just brought in MJ Morris to kind of make Billy, stretch Billy out a little bit, not make him comfortable. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's hard for me to believe. He's seen him in practice every single day. And so he still felt the need to bring in MJ Morris. So unless Billy Edwards has turned the corner, a pretty big corner, then it's hard for me to grasp around him starting, because I just feel like it wouldn't make sense to kind of go through this all if you felt good about Billy Edwards. And I think there's also a case against UConn where I think all three guys will play. It's like a 20-point spread or something like that. So depending on how the game goes, it could be interesting. If it's kind of a slow mashup type of game where it's closer than it needs to be, Maryland's in front, but it's closer than it needs to be, then maybe not all three guys play. But if Maryland controls the game, wins like they're supposed to, all three guys could potentially play. And maybe it's like an even series type of things. But the thing is, he said that he knows who the quarterback is going into the UConn game. My original thought was maybe it's still a competition after the UConn game. He sees those guys in game, and then he makes a decision going into the Michigan State game who the starter is going to be. So I think there's so many different ways. I talked about yesterday, maybe a 2-quarterback system could be beneficial. And with him saying he wants to keep his cards close, maybe going into the Michigan State game, he wants to keep his cards close, and he plays MJ and Billy, and he lets them both play. Like, there's so many different kind of things that could happen still. But I do think that it was smart for him not to name the quarterback, because it leaves UConn hanging, to be completely honest. It leaves them hanging. They're going to have a lot harder time preparing. It's going to be a lot more difficult to get ready for this Maryland football team with Coach Locksley not naming the starter. And even though it kind of stinks for us as fans not being able to know who the starter is, I do think that at the end of the day, it does benefit us. So I think it will help us beat UConn. Maryland's offensive and defensive line should dominate this game against UConn. I'll talk about that after this ad from 5 Hour Energy. After lunch, are you tired? You're not alone. In fact, research shows that more than over 70% of us hit this wall after lunch. I know for sure I can sometimes. Let a 5 Hour Energy shot help you leap over that wall instead of crashing into it. You want to get in shape, but you're having trouble staying motivated? That's another reason 5 Hour Energy shots can be part of your lifestyle and can really help you get an energy boost you need to get fit. We all know sometimes you do not want to go to the gym. I'm the same way. Take a 5 Hour Energy shot, give you the feeling and alertness so you can get to the gym. With zero sugar and convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. The 5 Hour Energy website has flavors galore, like watermelon, tropical burst, grape berry, and more. There is a flavor for everyone. Try them all. On this site, you can even option to build your own 12-pack or 24-pack. You choose the flavor, and it's delivered right to your door. So if you go to 5hourenergy.com, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, and get 5 Hour Energy product today. You can use promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. So going into this matchup, it's interesting. The Maryland offensive and defensive line should dominate UConn. They should absolutely dominate the UConn Huskies. When I think about the difference between when you're playing a Power 4 school versus not playing a Power 4 schools, when you're playing against a team like UConn, who's really a basketball school at the end of the day, that's kind of where they make their bread. But the biggest difference between a Big Ten and a school like UConn or schools in the SEC and the ACC and the Big 12 and all those different things, the biggest difference between those big-time conferences and some of these other conferences and some of these other lower schools is your up front guys, is your big dudes up front. They might have some pretty good skill players. They're not going to have what Maryland has at the skill positions. They're not going to have a running back like Roman Hemby. They're not going to have a receiver like Prather or Ty Fallon. Like, they're not going to have that. They're not going to have a cornerback like Jalen Husky or a guy at the safety position like Dante Trader. Like, they're not going to have quite that, but they can have some pretty solid players back there at the skill positions that can make plays. They might have a receiver too that can make some plays down the field. But the difference is the offensive and defensive lines, the biggest difference. And there's no reason that our offensive line shouldn't dominate this game and our defensive line shouldn't dominate this game. Starting with the offensive line, it's interesting because we have all 5 new starters up front, but I still totally expect us to look really good in this first game up front against UConn. There's no reason not to. I don't care how UConn plays the game. I don't really care what they have up front. I know that Maryland's more talented. I know that Maryland's offensive line should be able to push UConn's defensive line. That should happen. There's no reason that UConn should be able to stuff us and run stops and they should be able to get pressure on our passer. That should not happen. We should look good up front. 5 new starters or not, Maryland football should look good up front. I think that that's going to be a story of the game that I'm going to be looking at is if anybody struggles. Because if you struggle against UConn on the line, then you're going to struggle against Michigan State. You're going to struggle later on against Oregon. You're going to struggle later on against USC. Like, you're going to struggle if you're going to struggle against UConn. So if any of the guys don't look great up front, yeah, we can make excuses and be like, it's the first game, whatever. Like, we got to give him time, blah, blah, blah. But if anyone struggles up front, I'm going to be looking at it as a big time concern because everybody up front on that offensive line should look pretty good. And we should be able to create rushing lanes for Roman Hemby. And we should give all the time in the world to MJ Morris and Billy Edwards and Cameron Edge, whoever is going to be the starting quarterback. They should be able to push UConn around up front. And I don't see a reason why they shouldn't. I don't see why we wouldn't. I think that we should dominate up front. I think that's where we're going to make a lot of our bread and butter in this game against UConn. We're not going to need to be able to throw the ball over the place. We're not going to have to do that. We're not going to have to just throw our new quarterback into the fire. We're not going to have to do that. We can just rush the ball, give it to Roman Hemby a bunch, give it to Colby McDonald, give it to Nolan Ray, and push them up front. 5-yard, 6-yard carries, 10-yard carry, 6, 7-yard carries. Like, we should be able to average, I would say, probably 6 yards per carry against a team like this. I really do think that should be a possibility. Like, yeah, 5 yards per carry is good, but against a team like UConn, you should be able to get probably close to 6 yards per carry because you should have a couple of carries that go for pretty big gains. And so I think the offensive line should dominate. Defensive line, I think that's our biggest advantage. I think that we should be able to get to their quarterback a lot. First of all, we should stuff the run. There's no reason this team should be able to run on us. With guys like Jordan Phillips and Tommy Aking-Basote, 2 guys inside, and Tajay Johnson and whoever else is going to rotate in on that defensive line, the interior defensive line, they should be plugging holes. Like, UConn should be in 2nd and long, 3rd and long, over and over and over and over and over again if they try and run it on 1st down, because I feel really good about, yes, our interior defensive line, and then also our outside guys, the jacks, the outside linebackers, whatever you want to call them, depending on, I don't know exactly the terminology that Maryland uses for some of these guys, but Kellen Wyatt, those guys, Donnell Brown, Quayshawn Fuller, they should look good too. And when on the run stops, when we get run stops on 1st down by Phillips and Aking-Basote and whoever else, not talking about the linebackers right now, but Ruben Hippolyte and Caleb Whelan, when those guys get stops and then we force them to 3rd and longs, we should be able to get a couple sacks this game. I expect a guy like Kellen Wyatt or Donnell Brown or Quayshawn Fuller or even Jordan Phillips from the inside, or Neo Avery, I talked about him yesterday, a guy that I think could surprise a lot of people, is going to be an X factor. I think those guys should be able to pin themselves back and make sure that keep those guys in 3rd and long against our defense, and I think we'll be in a good situation. I know I'm just like, oh, they're going to dominate, but yeah, it's UConn. We should be able to dominate this type of game. Their quarterback shouldn't have a lot of time to throw, and if our defensive line struggling, that could be a storyline too, because it's like, what is our team? What is our identity? We're supposed to be led by this D-line. This D-line is supposed to be pretty good this year. Everybody's back, really. And when you get everybody back at a position group that you were decent at last year, nothing special, you expect them to take another jump into a pretty good territory. And I do believe that they'll do that. And I think there's no reason why we should be able to win this game strictly up front. We shouldn't have to bomb the ball over the place. We shouldn't have to create turnovers. We shouldn't have to do those things that we might have to do against some of the better teams in the Big Ten. We shouldn't have to do that against UConn. We just shouldn't. And so I think that's going to be an interesting part of the game, but I do think that's a place where Maryland's going to dominate. I'm going to really be watching, especially the offensive line. I'm really going to be watching, because if they struggle, that's going to be something I'm going to talk about as a concern going into the Michigan State game. Dante had some interesting comments about Maryland safety Brandon Jacobs. I'll talk about that after this ad from Ultimate GM. Hey, Locked On Terps fans, I want to take a moment to give you a heads up on the brand new mobile game that I think you're going to love as much as I do, Ultimate College Football Head Coach. In the amazing game and simulation, you get to step into the shoes of the head coach and lead your college football program to glory. Can you imagine actually being the head coach of the Maryland Terrapins, from recruiting players and hiring coaching staff to overseeing training camps and headlining school scholarships? You control every crucial detail of your program. It's all in your hands. You'll be able to handle all the pressure. And here's what I really love about the game. You're responsible for calling offensive plays during the games. Your strategy will not only determine the success of your football season, but will shape the future and legacy of your program. Ultimate College Football Head Coach is completely free and has no ads and is 100% playable offline. You can play on the go as you want and when you want to. And of course, you have a special offer for your Locked On Terps fans. Use a promo code Locked On CFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Make sure to take advantage of this perk, as it will get your team off to a really great start. To download the game, just visit ultimate-cfb.com, ultimatecfb.com, or look it up on the Apple Store. Ultimate College Football Head Coach, begin your coaching legacy today. So Dante Trader had some really interesting comments about Maryland freshman safety Brandon Jacobs, saying that he was going to be one of the best Maryland players to come out of Maryland, basically. And I've said it. I love Brandon Jacobs' size and his mobility as a player and what he brings in his length and his ability to cover a lot of parts of the field. I think he's a special type of player. And wait till we get him and Messiah Del home together next year. I don't know if we're going to start both of them next year. Could be interesting. 4-star Messiah Del home, who's a top 150 recruit. So it's going to be interesting with Brandon Jacobs because he has two guys in front of him in Glendon Miller and Dante Trader at safety that are going to play, that are two of our stars of our defense. But Dante's comments should not be taken lightly. When a player brings up a specific guy like a Brandon Jacobs and is like, he's going to be one of the better players to come out of here in this secondary and whatever, you listen to those types of things when he brings up a specific type of guy, because these players, these coaches, they don't have to just bring up anybody. Like, they don't have to just say and just say whatever they want. They don't have to do stuff like that. And so for the Terps, for Dante Trader to bring up Brandon Jacobs and talk about how he is as a player and how special he's going to be, we have to listen to something like that. And I've been excited about Brandon Jacobs, but I felt like it's been quiet around him. Not like I'm expecting a huge outroar on things with Brandon Jacobs and everything and like what he's doing in camp. Like, I'm not really expecting that type of thing, but just haven't heard a ton about him. So hearing something about him is a really good thing and is important for the Maryland Terrapins to be able to hear that he's performing at a high level for the Terps. Now, here's the interesting part about it. Here's my proposition that I think could be a possibility if certain things break a certain way for the Maryland Terrapins. So our corner room is interesting. It's almost all new starters, or it is all new starters in terms of your slot guy. I don't even know who's going to start in the slot still. Your outside guys, all new starters. What if that room struggles? What if it doesn't look that good? I'm not saying to play Brandon at slot or play him on the outside. That's not what I'm saying. But if our slot's struggling, if our corners are struggling, maybe popping Glendon Miller back in that slot position, back in that position where he can kind of he can play a little bit in the box, he can play in the slot, he can play some zone, he can do some different things, create havoc up there. Maybe that can help us a little bit. And then slide Brandon Jacobs into the starting lineup next to Dante at safety. I don't hate the idea of that because I don't love any of our slot corners, to be completely honest. And I don't know who Maryland's going to trot out there yet. But Glendon Miller looked really good last year with his size and length in the middle of the field, defending the middle of the field. He looked really good in that slot position for the Maryland Terrapins last year. And I thought he was one of the better ones in the Big Ten. I just think that's a possibility. If Brandon Jacobs is that good of a player, then get as many of your best players on the field as you possibly can. And with a guy like Brandon Jacobs, how talented he is, he definitely could be one of our best 11 guys on defense. So it's like we can get ahead for the future. We also are playing for the present because he's a really good player. And it's an interesting kind of thought because that corner room could struggle. The slot, whoever the new slot is, could maybe not look good. And maybe you change things around a little bit. This might not be right away. And I bet Glendon Miller wants to play safety because if he puts together a really good year of safety after putting together a good year playing in the slot, that opens up what he can be in the NFL. NFL guys love versatility. They love guys that have done different things, that play different spots in the defense because you become more valuable of a chess piece. So I'm sure Glendon wants to play every snap at the safety spot, but at the end of the day, we're going to have to do what's best for the team. And I'm not saying this will happen, but it's an interesting thought that I had that if Dante's saying Brandon Jacobs looks that good and he's playing that well, maybe you got to find ways to get him on the field. Just a thought. I don't think it'll happen like that, but I do think it's something that could be interesting. That's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Locked on Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you for listening to Locked on Terps.